present, something real serious to talk about. Heard this on the news, really cool. You guys hear about this? The inventor of knock-knock jokes? He won the Nobel Prize.
I still don't get it.
It's all right, Dan. You don't have to worry about it.
Get it? The Nobel Prize?
As in doorbell? Because he's knocking?
It's okay. Don't mind Dan. He's late to the party all the
It's
time.
all good. It's all right. Hey everyone. I'm Jeff.
I'm Yamila.
We created an app called the Schedunator. The idea behind this has been something I've been thinking about for a very long time. I work over at the Pacific Science Center just across the street. And at the Pacific Science Center, we have a very specific problem that could potentially open up to other people. But I was thinking about this one specific problem for a very long time. And that specific problem is not on this branch. Don't mind me. Switch to... It's here somewhere, right? Ah. Yeah, right. This is our daily schedule. This is what I look at every day when I go into the museum. And my job for a while was writing this. And there's no good way to write this. We do it by hand. So every number you see in there, I put in manually myself. Now there are a few things in this schedule. You'll notice there's 3 things in bold. No matter what happens throughout the day, that has to have a number in it. Each number represents a person. This is a mess. This is a dirty, horrible mess that I hated. This is a huge headache for everyone here at the Science Center. Because we run into these weird problems called loops, where one person has to relieve another person, but the person that they're relieving is relieving them. If that doesn't make sense to you, try working at the Science Center for one day, and it will make sense to you. Regardless, I was thinking about how to automate this for a very, very long time. Yes, sir?
What is it, Stefan?
What is this exactly? That's a very good question. So here at the Pacific Science Center, at the Pacific Science Center, I'm so used to saying here at, we have different positions that we have to be at. So for example, we do stage shows, we work in the butterfly house, at the tide pool, at the toddler exhibit, all these different positions. Every half an hour, there has to be someone at said position. So for example, when I'm at butterfly entrance, I quite literally spend half an hour saying, "Hi, how are you today? Would you like to enter the butterfly house? Please don't touch, please don't step on, exits on the other side." Rinse and repeat over and over again, right? But that's my job for half an hour. And then at the end of half an hour, the person relieves me. All these positions are essentially the same way with a few exceptions. But really, the problem comes down to this entrance and exit and tide pool situation. So my thought was, why do it by hand? There's no reason to do it by hand. Computers are getting better and better, and spreadsheets should be pretty easy to simplify. So we developed something that would hopefully do this for us. The Schedunator. Now the Schedunator, very, very simply, before I actually show you the schedule that it creates, we have this thing called work cards. And these work cards are all the people who work at the Science Center. Don't read those last few. Whether they can do the position, or if they're learning the position, or if they just flat out can't do it for some reason. And if they're older than 18. Here in, definitely Washington State, but in other places, if you are under the age of 18 and you're working, your break standard is different than an 18-year-old or older. So that is a very important consideration of all of this. So you can even see if they're 18, they get 2 breaks, not including lunch. If they're under 18, they get 3 breaks. Right? Simple enough. We can simply add a new employee. We can say they do these positions, but they'll never do tide pool. and they are over 18, bada bing, bada boo. But yeah, pretty sweet stuff. If we go back over to the schedule itself, we don't really see much. But we can populate the schedule. And it's not very pretty right now, because we literally finished building this morning. But at every position, entrance, exit, and tide pool, there's a unique person who can do that position. Following them is another unique person who can do that position. They'll never repeat. Well, the same person will never be in the same column, same row. Row, right? Row. Never be in the same row. And they're unique for that time slot. Now, right now we have it randomized. What we would love to do in the future is actually make it a little bit less randomized and make it so one person doesn't have to do entrance 2 times in a row, say as number 17 is stuck doing right here. We just didn't have enough time to actually populate that. Though we know the logic we need to do it. I would say the biggest strength of our group was how much time we spent thinking about this project. Not doing it, but just simply thinking about it. Emil, whenever you want to talk, I will take over this entire presentation.
Okay.
So, okay. She's cool with my talking. Is there anything? Emil, you did pretty much all the CSS. Is there anything you want to say on the CSS?
No, it's just pretty straightforward. I do want to talk about our report process, which I think was really great.
Please do.
I mean, at least the first couple of nights we spent just working through different approaches to this. And so if we go to our photos here, we just have many different diagrams. And as we work through different problems, that sort of would change. And so what I really enjoyed about working in this group is that we were able to attack the problems together as a group. And when it came down to programming, we also did part programming. So most of the code that we wrote together.
Yeah, if we were to go through the code, there isn't a single function we all didn't write together. With the exception of today when Will was sick, he didn't get to see the last 2 functions we wrote. But when we were stuck on it, we still slacked him and he helped us regardless. So it was really cool, actually. There's so many things we wanted to do with this that we simply couldn't. We really wanted to make the About tab content, but we just didn't have time. We wanted to actually make the Schedule tab content. It kind of is right now, but we just have it as display none, but we want that to be toggleable. We also didn't have a chance to save this to the database itself. The idea is that this whole area over here would be a admin side only. You populate the people and the schedule over here. You'd be able to select who's actually working that day, and then based on that, you can click a button to populate the schedule that then anyone can see. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And if it's not clear for people, we end up using Firebase for our database. So that's where all our information is being stored.
We spent a good chunk of the first week just learning how to operate, call from, use Firebase, which is a beautiful form server. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So those numbers are the unique IDs for the employees?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so when a person is created, they're given a unique ID at the Science Center. My unique ID is 9, I'll tell you right now. So when I go to work, I can expect to find 9 on the schedule, and that's me. And so it's the same ID here.
The schedule's made every day,
Every single day.
so it can't be made a week out because things
So
change.
things change. People call out sick, and people's positions change on the fly. So I didn't really have a great chance of fully explaining this, but people don't just start being able to do the job. When you get to the Science Center, you shadow a position. So butterfly entrance, for example, I might have Emil stand next to me, and she gets firsthand job experience learning how I do it before she would do it herself. So in that process, she still needs to be scheduled at butterfly entrance, but with somebody else. Maybe she decides inside the butterfly house, she has the fear of butterflies or moths, which is a very genuine, serious fear. We're not going to make her work inside of the butterfly house if that's the problem. So she will never actually work inside of there. But she might not realize that until 3 weeks onto the job. So if you write a schedule 3 weeks out, and then you find out one of your employees can't do something, it changes. And we can't just change one person, because one person might be relieving another person. We really should have a diagram for loops. I don't think it would help to explain this a little bit better in the future.
So your schedule has, can you go back to the schedule?
Yes, sir.
I see 16 time slots, and then there's 3 different positions. So does that mean that there's 16 times 3? Is that 64?
48.
48. Does that mean there's 48 employees, or there's some overlapping there?
There would definitely be overlap.
Okay.
One thing that, again, I wish we just had a little bit more time for, if we go back to this schedule here, you can see there's far more to it than just 3 positions. There are tons of positions. The 3 core positions, or sometimes called anchor positions in the Science Center, are positions where, let's just do a personal example. Emil, could you stand over by that speaker there? Let's say it's Emil and I's job to stand where we are right now, but we have to be exactly here. We're not allowed to leave this position. Until, of course, somebody steps in our place, right? So Emil and I are stuck. Even though we can see each other, we can't leave. We could imagine there's a door in the way. We're not allowed to exit the door until somebody allows me to leave. If we look at the schedule, we can see that we have this grid system, and somebody comes after you every half an hour. If it's my job in the next half an hour at the switch to be where Emil is, but it's her job to be where I am, how do we move?
Someone has to go there.
Precisely.
And then it's there.
Uh-huh. So this is what we call a loop. It's impossible to solve by ourselves. So what we would do in this situation at the Science Center is we would call somebody above us who wrote this schedule to come down and break the loop, to stand where I'm standing, so I can go to Emil and she can switch places.
Even if there's like nobody there, like you can't.
Specifically at the Butterfly House, we're regulated by the United States Department of Agriculture. It's technically a felony to steal butterflies from the Butterfly House. You could go to jail for 25 years plus.
So we can't leave the station because someone might.
Because in the 5 seconds it takes me to walk over there, say through 2 sets of doors, somebody else could walk through those sets of doors. This is
So it works, which is great.
yeah.
And then it'll get to a point where you can implement the rest of those things. And
Right.
you guys have to call your overseers to remind them to break you.
They don't even realize there's a loop 90% of the time. I know I didn't. Look at that schedule.
Right.
How do you see the loop? You don't. Yeah, it is. It is every time. I never intentionally wrote a loop, but there's no way to check it. Because again, this is just an Excel spreadsheet where the only thing that Excel allows us to do is make sure that somebody isn't in a row more than once. Right now, that's all it does. And this is a busy day. There are some days where there's only 15 people on the schedule. But here we can see there's at least 61 people on the schedule. There's just the number 61, so we can assume there's 61 people there, though there's a few gaps, because people call out sick. And so going back to the issue of scheduling in advance, if one person calls out sick, that makes the whole rest of the schedule potentially break. Because all of a sudden that person who's relieving that person isn't there, so we have to have a new person relieve that person. It just becomes a huge mess real fast. So it needs to be populated on the fly.
Is your thing accounting for the breaks?
Not yet. That was definitely a big part of it. We even started writing out how to do that.
What's the rotation? If it's like, if you're on an 8-hour shift,
Yeah.
30-minute blocks,
Yeah. 30-minute blocks.
like what do you, like, you do like X number of slots, then you have a break, then
It's all random.
Oh, okay.
I never know when my lunch is. It falls between 11:30 and 2. I never know when I'm
So
gonna eat.
whenever you can get a lunch,
There's so much more to the schedule I can talk to you about. I can talk about this schedule for hours.
That's what we did.
That's we spent like the first 2 nights, 6 hours talking about this thing. And all the problems I can have for it. And all the things, all my wishes and dreams for it. Because like something I didn't talk about that I'll just quickly mention are these right here. These hour-and-a-half blocks. Only myself and other presenters can do these, because these are stage shows. But that's an hour-and-a-half of us off the floor. What if there's only one person who can do it? All of a sudden that one person is just off the floor all day. Where do I take a lunch break? These are all things we have to think about when we're writing these schedules. So the idea was, hey, let's automate it. But the logic that goes involved with that is pretty intense. And even though we thought it all through, getting it to work with Firebase at the same time is incredibly difficult.
definitely now I see like why it's such a big problem
Yeah.
that you were talking about. So, well, I guess it is a question. So,
Yeah.
although the like project is over, are you still like planning on like trying to work this through?
Absolutely.
To make it.
At this point, even if I quit the Science Center tomorrow and never go back, the amount of hours I put into this schedule will never match the amount of hours it takes me to write the program to automate it. There is a person at my job right now who spends 30 plus hours a week dedicated to the schedule. And I know that sounds like a crazy number, but every time someone calls out sick, they basically have to rewrite the whole thing.
You need science to fix this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, computer science is not the kind of science the Science Center chooses to science.
But just think
Wow,
about
say
all
that
the
10 times
other-
fast.
That was pretty deep. That was pretty deep. That was like,
I don't think I can
whoa.
say it again.
I was like blown away like that.
Think about all the other like the Science Center has this problem. But think about like all the other places that probably have the same problem that you guys are having.
If you ever go to Disneyland and you think about cast members, they have a very similar problem. Yeah. So while writing this, I was definitely thinking about the Science Center as a base, but once it becomes workable for the Science Center, it'd be pretty easy to manipulate and apply elsewhere. Most institutions don't do a half an hour, but a lot of institutions do hourly, and that'd be pretty easy to switch. Lots of institutions have places where you have to be somewhere for an hour. There's no way to leave. That's what this is. This is just on a very micro scale. It'd be pretty easy to fix.
So is the issue with this thing, is it a lack of personnel? Do you always have to keep like people around, or is it just more conceptual, like this is how we're gonna run things?
Craziest part is that what you just said changes on a daily basis. On this day, there were too many people. It was just hard to schedule everything. Like, where do you even put people? There comes a point when you're writing a schedule, you're just writing numbers and random columns. You're not even checking. You just need that person to exist on the floor. Because if somebody doesn't exist on the floor, they're like, hey, I have a problem on top of all the other problems you have to deal with. Right? Because people want to know what they're supposed to be doing. Anymore, after working at that museum for 8 or 10 years, if I'm not on the schedule, I go, cool. I'm gonna go do my own thing for half an hour, you know.
Right.
But that's
It's like an unscheduled break, but it's not really a break.
yeah. I'm gonna go check my email because I'm not allowed to do that when I'm on the floor.
Besides this list, is there another list that has like a list of people and then like their number?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. On the back side of the schedule has like all the daily notes you might need to know, like, hey, this changed at this position, read this, but also a key that tells you everyone's numbers. What's crazy is when you write the schedule, you can start memorizing numbers.
Are there floaters?
What was that?
Are there floaters?
People who can just kind of walk around.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. So right now we have it set up by building. So there's several buildings in the Science Center. Like in building 1, these 2 columns don't necessarily have to have people in So we say they're float. They can kind of walk around and go do other things. And then we have the anchor positions over in Ackerley Gallery, but all these other people in that building in Ackerley are float. They can walk around and do other things. Again, the problem comes, you don't see the loops. You don't notice them until it's happening, essentially. And on busy days, sometimes you don't even realize that there's a loop happening, and you get relieved 15 minutes late because you didn't call ahead, and then you just missed your break.
Oh, everyone has a radio.
I just don't want to work there.
And only people at anchor positions have a radio.
That's the least ones.
But they can't walk away from the anchor to tell the people who don't have a radio what just happened on the radio.
So if you see someone walking past, you say, hey, come early. Okay, this way.
Yeah, I've done it before. But like the problem with the radio is we'll have a line to enter the butterfly house that say like the entrance to the butterfly house is directly behind me. There's a line of people front to back around the corner going that way. You can't even see the
You
other
need to
one.
like have a button or like something where you press like where
Could
you
be.
are.
This is another solution.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, this is doing everything, and this is doing everything you want it to do. Would you want it to still be a radio-based thing, or like a mobile app thing, or?
I would love the schedule to be on my phone. That'd be really cool. You would still need a radio at each position for other problems that arise, like heaven forbid a butterfly gets out of the butterfly house, because that sucks when that happens.
Is everything shut down in that house?
It can. Depends.
Sounds like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Like dinosaur out of exhibit.
Like Velociraptor.
Like there's a unique radio call, and people come running with nets if a butterfly comes out.
Is it a butterfly that's like more important than the others in there?
Because the government says you have to do it this way, it doesn't matter who it is. It's like, also, if a butterfly escapes the butterfly house, it's kill on the site. I will clap one of them out of the air.
Hold on, that's what you're instructed to do?
That's what we're supposed. Once they're out, containment is #1 priority. Life is a very distant second.
Oh, because they can be invasive.
Bingo, bango. Yeah. Pregnant female gets out. Crazy stuff. If we found eggs out here, just one invasive species butterfly egg, Pacific Science Center would be held accountable for clear cutting 5 miles of all greenery, all plant life around the Seattle Center area. It would come out of our budget, and Sarah Moore, who's in charge of the butterfly house, would get thrown to prison and fined for letting it happen.
And that's
This is
bad, right?
crazy.
Yeah, it's not good. The Science Center would get shut down indefinitely. All of our money, every penny we have would go to that project.
So,
Seems like you
But
need
this is
robot
something we tell
butterflies.
guests. We're not afraid, like, no, seriously, don't take that butterfly.
You should make genetically engineered sterile butterflies
Yeah, that'd be cool.
or robot butterflies.
Robot butterflies would be better, because we don't breed butterflies at all. So if we just got sterilized ones, that'd be great.
So then, do they get delivered in like an armored truck?
If you consider USPS armored.
so do you guys get to have like your phones on you?
No, we're not supposed to. So, I could talk about the Science Center for a really long time. I've worked there for 10 years. But to get back to this schedule at hand, does anyone have any other questions about the app itself?
What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, for me, I really enjoyed breaking it down. So, working with Will and Jeff, we just putting the different pieces together, we would get stuck, and just talking through things, and eventually seeing it work, and then doing the same thing over with the new function. I really enjoyed that process.
Piggybacking on what she said, us telling you about this right now, I feel like some of you might have started to feel overwhelmed with writing this, right? A little bit. But that first week we spent just talking about it and breaking it down, like, oh, we have this loop. Let's write the logic for that in pseudocode right now. Great. What's the next problem? Let's write a pseudocode function for that. it made it feel like this huge, overarching, overwhelming thing was super easy. That was my biggest takeaway. Was like just figure the hell out of it. You know, like really figure it out. Really get to know what it is you need to do. Because as we were writing functions, the function writing themselves wasn't that bad. Like once we got it going, we got through it. It just took us a while to get to that point where we're getting to.
Will color coordination help with anything?
Yeah, it might.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If the exit was always red and the entrance was always green, and then tide pool was blue, and then on your specific schedule you have red, green, blue, whatever colors in between.
For our specific, like I get handed one of these every morning. That's in my pocket, and I just highlight my number.
Oh,
So my number always is the same. On a phone, it'd be pretty sweet to just be able to be like, look at it, hit the number 9, show number 9 everywhere,